Honestly, I don't want the fame, I don't want the prestige. I just, for myself, want to say that I'm world champion. If I win this thing, the first person I'm going to go to is going to be my father.
To have my poster on in the Rio every time I walk in to play the main event for the rest of my life, that would be really awesome. If I were to win the tournament, the first person I'm going to go and see is definitely going to be my father.
Texas Dolly Brunson, who wrote the book.
He's moving in for the kill.
And there it is. Helmuth wins the championship.
Moneymaker puts his name amongst the greatest players in the game.
Wake me now.
Greg Merson is the main event champion.
Biggest day of my life.
Main event, final table.
Welcome to Las Vegas in the World Series of Poker main event final table telecast presented by Wild Turkey. Welcome to the biggest night in poker. Inside the Penn & Teller Theater at the Rio All-Suite Hotel and Casino, supporters of 23-year-old Ryan Reese and 29-year-old Jay Farber have gathered to see who will take home over $8.3 million and the gold bracelet. Will nerves be a factor for the amateur Jay Farber? He's got his dad Herbert here, and he's also got the chip lead. And then there's Ryan Reese, the youngest player to reach this year's final table. Confident, dangerous, also likable. His dad is here also to lend fatherly support. Hi everyone, welcome ringside if you will. I'm Lon McCarron along with my longtime broadcast partner Norman Chad and three-time World Series bracelet winner Antonio Esfandiari. In years past, we have come back to crown a winner with just 3 players remaining, but not tonight. Tonight is different. We are down to heads up for this championship. At any moment, we could have our next main event champion. Antonio, I want to start with you. What can the viewers take away from last night's action to help them understand what may occur tonight?
Well, Lon, first of all, last night we saw some amazing poker. I mean, it was incredible to see how well these players adjusted to what was going on at the table. We saw Reese make an amazing laydown early on with ace-queen, and Jay Farber adjusted. You know, he started off playing really tight in the beginning and then just all of a sudden turned the gears up as things went on. And so we saw some great poker yesterday. I'm excited to see what happens tonight.
Norman, we've got 2 feel-good stories remaining here tonight. Reese, the kid who wanted to be a millionaire by the age of 25, and boy, has he done it with some change to spare. Farber, the VIP host here in Las Vegas, on the cusp of throwing what might be a bigger party than is happening here tonight at the Penn & Teller Theater.
Ryan Reese said he was the best player at this final table. We smiled and we laughed. Well, I think Reese the Beast is smiling and laughing right now.
Indeed.
And how about Jay Farber, the one true amateur of the November 9? He's sort of a cross between Lou Ferrigno and Chris Moneymaker.
Indeed.
And if he can tame the Beast, he will be a new age Chris Moneymaker.
You know, this could go so many ways tonight. Let's take a look at what is at stake. First, of course, the money, a staggering sum, over $8.3 million to the champion. A $3 million difference between first and second. Of course, the gold bracelet goes to our champion. That alone is worth $500,000, and the prestige of becoming the main event champion, well, that is immeasurable. One thing we know about Jay Farber is how important the title of champion is to him. We asked him about that earlier.
Making the final table is a fantastic experience. It's, like I said, it's every poker player's dream to get here and every poker player's dream to win. I don't know why I wouldn't enjoy it. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for most people, and it's an incredible opportunity. So, you know, I'm gonna enjoy it the best I can and make the most out of it. Becoming an ambassador of the poker world is not something I ever really thought about, but, you know, if it happens, I'm happy to, you know, be the best ambassador for poker that I can. I don't want to, you know, step into the role and not, you know, not succeed at it.
All right, let's attack Jay Farber if we dare from 2 angles. Jay Farber, the player, Jay Farber, the person. Antonio, What does Jay Farber bring to the felt?
Well, he brings a lot of heart. We saw that last night. And, you know, this is kind of an opportunity for a dream to really come true. And so I think he's got nothing to lose and everything to gain. So I see Jay coming out and slugging a little bit more than we expect him to do so.
Norman, as we take a look at Jay Farber's bio board right now, what really stands out about him for you?
You know, he went from being a bouncer in a bar to being a club host. That's a big upgrade. And poker-wise, he's done the same thing. Here's a guy who is a decent cash game player, and now on the precipice of being world champion.
There you see some of his keys to victory. Jay Farber enters heads-up play as the chip leader, but not by much. 23-year-old Ryan Reese right behind him. He said before the final table he was the best player here, and so far he's backing that up. We spoke to him about his image and whether he was nervous coming in. All right, well, Antonio, let's skip on to you about Ryan Reese. We talked about Jay Farber. The same question now for Ryan Reese. What does the Beast bring to the felt?
Well, I think that he probably has a lot more experience than Jay Farber, and certainly he exudes a lot more confidence. I think he's coming into this match knowing that he's the clear favorite, clearly thinking that he's the clear favorite. And so, you know, it's hard to beat a guy that truly believes he's going to win.
I think we have two of those guys at this table tonight. We have seen Ryan Reese is quite a character in his own right, Norman?
It's incredible. As Antonio mentioned, he's very confident, and I'm struck by how casually confident he is. As young as he is, he acts like he's been here before and he expects to win. I still can't figure him out, though, Lon. One moment, I think he's still a babe in the woods, and the next moment, I think he's the fox guarding the hen house.
Well, maybe the perfect cover for a poker player. Not sure exactly where they're going to be headed at any individual moment. Now, getting to heads up did not take as long as we might have expected. And for Ryan Reese and Jay Farber, well, there were not too many bumps in the road. Let's take a look at the 7 eliminations that got us to this heads-up battle tonight. And Antonio, one of the things that stands out about those eliminations is that our 2 heads-up players were the only guys who scored knockouts all night long.
That is pretty interesting. I mean, I think they just happened to wake up at the right hand at the right time. And it's pretty incredible that we have a final table where the only 2 remaining guys knocked everybody else out.
Reese with 4 knockouts, Farber with 3, and Norman with the knockouts. Comes chips, of course, but also comes, I imagine, a mountain of confidence.
Oh, yeah, you can see it in their body language. Both Reese the Beast and Jay Farber seem to exude calmness. They seem to exude confidence. And it was almost like they were meditating at the table, and it's as they expected to get here, and they did get here.
Of course, J.C. Tran, the favorite coming in. He was the chip leader coming in, goes out in 5th place. And then Reese, Antonio, stunned us both with back-to-back knockouts on back-to-back hands. That's almost unheard of.
Yeah, I mean, if there's ever a time to run good, this would be it. And Reese did just that. And he also played amazing.
He did indeed. And it was quite a shock when Amir picked up the pocket pair. Reese picked up the bigger pocket pair. And finally, we were down to 2. Payouts now, you see millions have been paid out, but there's still over $13 million on the table to be handed out. First place worth over $8.3 million. Can you imagine playing for this amount of money, Antonio? Oh, I guess you can, right?
Mr. One Drop, 18 million in the bank.
Yeah, but I only had to beat 47. These guys had to beat over 6,000 people. I think it's a whole different ballgame. I got lucky.
It is an amazing thing. You have to get lucky to be able to get to this point. Clearly, a lot to play for. The biggest night of these 2 players' lives, Antonio. I'm going to finally put you and Norman on the spot. You first, Antonio. Who wins this thing tonight?
Wow, I think it's really close. I mean, there's different things to take into perspective here. I think that chip advantage is huge, and Jay Farber comes in with a 20 million chip advantage over Reese, and that has a lot to do with it. But I think that Reese has a lot better understanding and better game theory about the game, and so I think it's really close. But I think at the end of the day, I like a good story, and I want the nightclub host to prevail. I think it's going to be Jay Farber.
You have a choice on how many hands? What do you think?
I'm going to pick 48 hands.
48 hands, Jay Farber, the winner, according to Antonio. Norman, Chad, your pick tonight.
Antonio knows nothing. I know less. I will take Reese the Beast, 1 hand.
Reese is the shorter stack.
Okay.
We can't have one hand.
Don't bother me with details. There's a first for everything in poker. I don't know how it's going to work out, but he will take it down. He'll take it down in one hand. No, I'll be honest with you, Lon. It's very close, but Ryan, you know, he's younger. He's actually more experienced. Yep. He's fresher. He's better educated. He's also taller than Jay, so I think you can take him inside and post him up. It'll be close, but I'm going with Reese the Beast.
In one hand, okay. Well, we've got these two on record. No prediction here. I think that covers the bases just fine. Ryan Reese and Jay Farber, heads-up battle. That's coming right after the break. We're coming back to the Rio right after this. The 2013 World Series of Poker is presented by Wild Turkey, bottled but never tamed. Please drink responsibly. And in part by WSOP, Full House Pro on Xbox 360. Download poker's most authentic experience free on Xbox Live Arcade today. Welcome back to Las Vegas and the Penn and Teller Theater. The prestige, the money, and the bracelet all on the line right now. Heads up for the No Limit Hold'em World Championship. And right now for our introductions, let's go down to our tournament director, Jack Ethel.
Heads up action will begin with 1 hour, 49 minutes, and 43 seconds remaining in level 39. Now for tonight's introductions and shuffle up and deal, please welcome the voice of the UFC Octagon, Mr. Bruce Buffer.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live from Las Vegas for the 2013 World Series of Poker Main Event Final Table. And now, introducing first, a 23-year-old from Las Vegas by way of Lansing, Michigan, with approximately 85 million in chips. He is Reese the Beast, Ryan Reese. And his opponent, the man who was always the life of the party, with a shade over 105 million chips, from Las Vegas, the Panda, Jay Farber.
Can I send Jay? Send Jay. Go.
Ladies and gentlemen, the gladiators of the cards have now taken their seats on the green felt battlefield of champions, because this is the moment you've all been waiting for. It's time! Let's shuffle up and deal!
And with that, we are ready to go. The fans are ready to go. The players, not so much. Who knows what is in their mind right now, Antonio? Maybe they would like to have be able to fold a couple hands, get into the game a little bit, but not heads up, right?
Definitely not heads up. And I think that both these guys obviously know that it's heads up, and so they have to play every single hand. Every time they have a button, it's, you know, over 90% they're going to come in with a raise or at least call. So
and this doesn't help, Norman. Having all the money on the bracelet on the table.
Keep your left eye shut if you're Ryan. Keep your right eye shut if you're Jay.
All right, beginning with hand 172. You saw heads up last year, 17 hands.
I don't think we're going to see a lot of gunslinging. I don't think they're going to be coming out just firing, 3-betting, 4-betting. I think we'll see a lot more selective, careful aggression in this heads-up match. I know that Reese doesn't want to play huge pots. He wants to kind of try and chip away at Farber. Farber obviously knows this going into today. I'm sure he spent some time with his coaches, even though I'm pretty sure he went out last night.
We did play from 9 players down to 2 last night, played 171 hands. So this is hand number 172 of this championship table. The blinds right now at 500,000, 1 million with a 150,000 chip ante. Reese opens with a raise, and he will take it down. Reese with king, queen suited, a very comfortable hand to start heads up.
That's a beautiful hand to start heads up play. Reese certainly would have liked to have seen a call. Loves to play that pot in position against his opponent, but 9-3, there's not much you can do with the hand.
Chip denominations 4 in play. The biggest one, literally and in denomination, 500,000. It is an oversized chip you'll see in their stack. The beige chip worth 250,000, lavender 100,000, and the smallest chip in play worth 2,500,000. At this point, Norman, how do you think they separate themselves from, wow, this is a lot of money, I don't care which place, with I got to be champion?
Well, I think, again, there's got to be nerves, so I don't think the money comes into play right now, and both of them obviously would not be used to heads-up tournament play. So it's going to be a little feeling out process for both until they feel comfortable.
Farber picks up a nice big hand right there, ace-queen.
Yeah, I mean, look, the $3 million is a lot of money as far as the difference between first and second, but I think the value of winning first is much more than just $3 million. I mean, you get to be world champion for the rest of your life.
So heads up, it's an entirely different animal, isn't it, Antonio?
Entirely different animal. I mean, every hand has value, almost every hand, and there's so much dead money in the pot every single time, and you really can't fold your way to victory. If you want to play, you have to be in there, being the aggressor and playing lots of hands.
So the button has the action pre-flop, and then, of course, because the button in No Limit Hold'em has position for throughout the rest of the hand, they will act second post-flop.
And you're going to see the button bring it in for a raise a lot. That's just pretty standard heads-up play now.
Because you will have position post-flop.
You will have position post-flop. And, you know, for those of you tuning in that might be new to poker, position is when you get to act after your opponent. And it doesn't seem like that big of a deal because, hey, you each have 2 cards and you share the flop. But when you act after your opponent, A, you gain a lot of information about your opponent's hand, but you also get to play your hand in a different way.
Farber with a re-raise to $4.5 million using some of those oversized red chips. So the 29-year-old from Las Vegas. Both players actually now live here in Las Vegas.
I don't think there's any version of Reese that's folding. He's got position. He only has to call, you know, another 1.9 million, and so getting the price that he's getting, I don't think there's any chance he's going to fold. I think he's always at least going to take a flop.
We'll keep the chip counts current up top. See the blinds and the ante. And you have to read their faces to get an idea what they're up to, and it really looked like there was no way Reese was getting away from this hand.
No, I mean, he's just getting too good of a price. He's got position on his opponent. He's always going to want to see a flop and see what happens. Now, Jay re-raised him pre-flop, so he's obviously trying to represent some sort of a big hand.
There's the flop. Queen, 8, king.
And so given that Farber was the pre-flop raiser, he is supposedly, given the new poker theory, which has been going on for a few years now, is to continuation bet, and we call it a C bet. And so it's pretty standard that if you're the pre-flop last aggressor, you continue on the flop with a bet, simply hoping that your opponent has missed. So what you have is kind of irrelevant at this point. This is pretty standard. He's betting 3.4 to win almost 9 million. If it works just a third of the time, he's doing okay.
And unless he was getting cute pre-flop, those cards are cards that might have hit Jay Farber's hand, the king and the queen.
Right. I mean, you know, certainly with any big, you know, cards, ace king, ace queen, king,
would have hit about
king,
90% of the hands he played last night.
Right. But you know, if he's got 2 9s or 2 10s, this is a pretty gross spot.
And talk about gross. Reese comes back with a raise.
Okay, so now this is really interesting because if Reese has a hand like king jack or king 10, there is no way he would raise this flop. I think he's almost always calling in position. He doesn't want to take away his opponent's bluff factor. If Farber is bluffing, he doesn't want him to stop from bluffing. He also has a very good hand, but not a hand that he wants to play a massive pot with. So it's more likely.
Right, top pair for Reese. And we're looking for an ace. He had bottom pair.
Perhaps I have no clue what I'm talking about. I would have just called with that hand.
So it is Ryan Reese stacking the chips in the first major hand of this heads-up battle. Back to Las Vegas in just a moment. Welcome back to Las Vegas. It's Jay Farber and Ryan Reese heads up to claim that bracelet and a little more. Tail of the tape right now, you see Farber, the older of the two, but as Norman mentioned earlier, Reese pretty much the more experienced poker player. No bracelets, 2 World Series cashes for Farber, 4 for Reese coming into this event. And total earnings, well, Reese with the edge there. And the crowd in a frenzy here at the Penn and Teller Theater as we continue now with the 4th hand of heads up. Ryan Reese just about evened up the battle with that last hand, and a confidence builder, I'd imagine.
Yeah, of course. I mean, when you go from the underdog to now having the same amount of chips and you believe you're the better player, huge confidence builder.
Farber with a raise to $2 million.
And he surprised me with that king 10. I mean, usually that's a spot where you want to call in position. Very tricky, Mr. Reese, very tricky.
9 queen deuce, 2 spades. We will be seeing the cards, as you have noticed, after the hand is over. Until then, you see the graphic with the backs of the cards. Both check. Turn card, tray of clubs. Farber keeping an eye on his opponent, not the board.
That card doesn't change much.
Check, check.
So you can pretty much take a queen or a 9 out of Jay's range. I mean, I think that if he had a queen, he would have for sure at least bet the flop, if not the turn when it's checked to him. And it's also very unlikely he has a 9. So he probably has an ace high hand or maybe a king high hand.
Yeah, Farber with a king high, and he will take that pot. And that is the nature of heads up. It is a gut check every hand because you're often not going to make a hand and you have to commit chips without a hand.
It's funny because king 5 looks like a total garbage hand when in fact heads up king 5 is actually a pretty good hand. A lot of times you win with just king high. And I actually think that Farber showed some weakness there checking the flop and the turn twice. I'm surprised Reese didn't take a stab at it on the river, but perhaps he thought he might have get called by ace high.
Norman, of course, these guys were giddy at the end of last night. They were pretty chatty with each other, talking about going out on the town. That actually didn't happen. Farber got for a little bit. A little more stoic today, though.
Well, they were actually both stoic yesterday. That whole November 9 final table had no talk. You didn't have a single time of somebody asking, do you want me to call you? Do you what type of hand do you got? And I think we're going to see the same type of demeanor today. 2 guys heads ahead with very, very little talk.
The most talk we saw was from J.C. Tran trying to get information out of Farber once Farber took a whole bunch of chips off it. Tran did not get any info out of Jay Farber. So Reese with the raise. Farber folds 5 deuce.
Reese was a cashier at Kmart. He was a parking booth attendant at Michigan State, so he's used to handling small amounts of money. This is a different story. These chips are worth a lot.
We got to applaud both of these guys because we have to go the other side. We have to applaud them. They both have degrees from college, too.
Well, there's one more legitimate degree. Ryan Reese went to Michigan State, and I believe Jay Farber went to your alma mater, Santa Barbara City College.
Just one of my alma maters.
I think it's a converted warehouse somewhere off the beach in Santa Barbara.
It worked. Farber with a raise to $2 million.
It's incredible, really, what's at stake here. I mean, these guys both understand this is a truly once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Every poker player's dream, and only one of them will be victorious.
A call from Reese for $1 million more. Here is the flop. 8-4-4. Reese checked it. Farber with position with the button, and second.
These are the kind of boards you almost always want to see bet, especially in position when you raise pre-flop, just because it's very hard for your opponent to have a hand.
And that continuation bet does come. $2.3 million from Farber.
$2,050,000.
So if Farber is up to no good with just any 2 random cards doing a continuation bet, Reese understands that he can probably take the pot away from him pretty easily. But even knowing that, it's an upward battle when you're out of position. And so it's very likely Farber has 10 jack or queen jack or something.
Another couple of paint cards for Farber, and he will take down that pot. Regarding what these two players did, let's check in with the other member of our broadcast team down on the floor, Kara Scott.
So how do you prepare for this defining moment of your career? Well, if you're Jay Farber, you go out to a club. He told me that he was out every night this week, and last night was no different. But for him, it's like a relaxing evening at home. Now, he has a lot of friends who are professional fighters, and they told him that although preparation and training is, of course, really important, you also need to decompress before a big fight so you don't get up in your own head, and the fights don't get much bigger than this. Now, Ryan almost went with Jay, but his girlfriend, Tabitha, very wisely had him reconsider. He had a nice, quiet drink with friends and family and then tried to go to bed. He said, though, that the adrenaline made it almost impossible to sleep, but even still, he's feeling good and he's ready to close the deal.
A lack of sleep really doesn't come into play in the early going here at all, Antonio.
No, I mean, I'd rather have a couple of drinks and get my sleep versus no drinks and less sleep. I think the sleep is crucial.
Certainly the deeper you go. I mean, it is very important to decision making.
I mean, you need that brain power.
Well, as Jay has often said, he works 9 to 5, but it's the other 9 to 5. So
Right.
he's used to being up to 5 or 6 in the morning and then waking up and doing something like this.
Reese raised.
4-3-50.
And a re-raise from Farber.
This is Jay's second 3-bet. He 3-bet with ace-8 earlier. And I think that his re-raises are just a little too small because now he's getting himself in these situations to play bigger pots against a good opponent out of position. This is not really where you want to be.
So the re-raises by him, you believe, induce a greater chance that Ryan Reese is going to continue on.
Look at the price that Reese is getting to see a flop. He's never, ever folding. And I think he's doing a lot more than folding here. So this is a very powerful play. This is the old 4-bet in position. And it's hard for Farber to continue without a hand here because if he doesn't have a real hand, it's, you know, chances are he's not going to flop anything, and now he has to play this pot out of position. If he misses, what's he going to do? Check fold.
Tabitha Trask, Ryan's girlfriend, part of the large cheering contingent.
9.1. 9.1. Yeah, it's 3.
A little over 9.1 million. And once again, Farber releases. Farber gave up a king that time. And Ryan Reese winning the mind game there.
That was poetry.
And so 95 million chips each for these two heads-up players. The bracelet's worth $500,000, but there's 8.3 million to be handed out to the winner.
I guarantee I'm going to win the main event because I'm better than everybody else at the final table.
That hit you upside the head last night. How do you feel about it tonight,
I think
Antonio?
I'm eating my words now. The School of Phil helmet does work.
I don't
started
think you
playing
just know who you said
poker
not
in 8th
enough
grade
to.
with friends in his basement. He was also doing his homework in the basement, so don't knock the basement. It's a great place to study and gamble.
Farber started playing poker in Santa Barbara with his buddies, just similar to Ryan Reese, and found himself in a nearby casino that allowed 18-year-old gamblers, and then started making his way back and forth from Santa Barbara to Las Vegas, a little more than he expected. Farber will take it with King 9, and he ended up coming to Las Vegas to make a career out of poker. Got into VIP business, and then found poker was a good way to network with that business.
Well, he calls himself an independent VIP host. He doesn't work for the man, he works for himself. But once in a while, Jay says he's really just a glorified personal concierge. Essentially, you know, his job is to get bodies into nightclubs. It's commission-based, it's performance-based, and of course, poker is sort of commission-based and performance-based.
Absolutely.
So now when he goes out and gets his own table, does he get a commission for bringing himself? How does that work?
It's like doing your own home loan, I guess. I'm not sure he can do that. Reese with a raise to $2.5 million. The blind still at $500,000 for the small blind, $1 million for the big blind. And there's a call from Farber.
Farber says it's simple. If you're in Las Vegas, you contact him, and whatever you want here, it's just a phone call away from Jay. Sounds like he should be mayor.
7-6-5, the flop. Farber with a slight chip advantage beginning the hand, 96.7 million to 93.9 million for Reese, as you see at the top of your screen. And now a 6 on the turn pairs the board. We will show you the hole cards when the hand is over. Because we are on just a 15-minute delay, we cannot show you the cards face up while the hand is in progress. 2.1 million from Jay Farber on the paired board.
It's interesting because Reese raised pre-flop and then checked back on the flop. A lot of times with an ace-high hand, you might make this play. Certainly if he has an ace on this hand, he's calling Farber on the turn here. If he had total air, I think he would have stabbed at the flop, hoping to win the pot right then and there.
Reese pays to see the river card, 10 of spades. How committed is Jay Farber to this hand? Now, looking at his chips, reaching for those red $500,000 denominations.
And it's interesting because you can go through the process. You know, if he has a 5 in his hand, right, and on the turn had a 2 pairs, his 5 is probably pretty good. But would he bet a 5 this strong given there's a 10 and a 7 out there? It's unlikely. It's possible. I think sometimes you might want to try and get value out of that spot. It's pretty clear that Reese doesn't have a 7. I don't think he has a 7. I think he might have just had it.
And there is a 7 for Farber. He flopped top pair.
So Reese just had the straight draw. He had the lower end of the straight draw and decided to take a free card. Didn't get there and gave up the pot.
And we look at Farber, and last night he had the sunglasses on. Then he put them on top of his cap. It looks like he doesn't even have them at the table tonight.
Yeah, he wore the sunglasses for a good deal of the main event on and off, and we don't see him on the cap, and so maybe he is going all natural. Ryan Reese is not wearing sunglasses at any point in this main event, to his credit.
And by the way, you got to give it a little credit for Farber. He just value bet second pair on the river there, and you know, also called a raise with King 7 out of position. So I think he's adjusting pretty well to this heads-up match.
Farber with the lead.
2 million.
Boy, they're going to spend a lot of time acting and then looking over at the other guy, both taking little glances back and forth.
And Reese doesn't want to play this hand at all. 9 high for both. But Farber's lead out bet and got the pot there. And how much do you like to fold pre-flop in the heads-up battle? I mean,
you really don't want to fold pre-flop, but when you're out of position with total air, it's kind of gross.
David Benefield, our 8th place finisher, turned $20 into $101 playing the slots at Binion's. In case what he was doing after last night.
Yeah, that's disappointing. First of all, Binion's needs the money, so he shouldn't be taking it from them. I just wish he would turn back to his East Asian political science mega studies.
2.5.
Reese with a raise to $2.5 million.
2.5.
David Benefield came in as the short stack and saw Mark Newhouse go out first from this championship table, and Benefield had a double up but could not claw his way out of that short stack. Got knocked out in 8th. Got a call. Deuce, 6, ace, couple of hearts. Farber first to act. You see the yellow bar around his name. He checks, and now Reese.
I mean, yeah, this is a very standard bet, just because there's a very good chance that Farber missed this flop, and out of position, it's hard to continue unless you connect it on some level. So this is pretty standard.
And Farber does get rid of it. Pocket jacks for Reese.
Ryan Reese, a World Series circuit graduate. A lot of his buddies on the World Series circuit. It was like a breeding ground for a great World Series. Lonnie Harwood won a bracelet, Jonathan Hilton, Brian Campanello. So it is a breeding ground for people like Ryan Reese. And you see how well he's done here.
Reese, former poker dealer, Michigan State graduate, as you mentioned, grew up in Waterford. 4 World Series cashes, but a lot more on the circuit, and that circuit really is bringing a lot of people into the bigger events, as it were, in Las Vegas.
Man, you know the circuit, Lon. You just made a circuit final table, and maybe that's a stepping stone for you to learn how to play poker.
I know you just want me to be a better poker player, so maybe you can get, you know, somebody else in this seat here, right? Reese sees Farber raise it up to $2 million, and Reese will fold once again. Queen Trey against 7 Trey, and the Queen will take it. But yeah, as you mentioned, a couple of the circuit buddies for Reese here, a couple of bracelet winners, and they're quite supportive of each other. It is a grind. I mean, it is a tour. If you look at Reese's results, he played the circuit in Blackhawk, Colorado, Cherokee, North Carolina, Chester, Philadelphia, to New Orleans, came back to Las Vegas for the World Series, and played in Hammond and LA and Vegas in the circuit. I mean, it is a grind.
It's a grind. You're constantly on the road. He had a great circuit season. He had 10 cashes on the World Series circuit in the 2012-13 circuit campaign.
3 final tables. Reese with a race of $2.5 million. And Farber folds. Antonio, in your mind, does it matter where you get the reps when you're on the uptick as a poker player? You need to play. You need to get the experience. Does it matter where that experience comes from, as long as you make it a gradual move up? Maybe.
I mean, I think if you play against better players, you're going to get better a lot faster. And certain tournament stops obviously have better players, and some have less experienced players.
Ryan was tweeting, and as our theme music says, this is going to be the best day of his life.
I'll take the under when he has a kid.
Indeed, we heard that from J.C. Tran. He said no matter where he finished, it was not going to be the best day that happened to him in November. His wife is due to give birth to their second child any day now, due next week.
It'll definitely be top 3.
Yep.
Winning the main event's pretty strong.
Farber raised to $2 million. And,
I think we see a 3-bet here.
I think so.
4.5.
4.5 million now. Farber needs $2.5 million more.
I think this is the first time we've seen Reese 3-bet Farber here.
That's a call. And Farber looks at Reese like, you cannot scare me off for an extra $2.5 million.
Now remember, there's 9 million chips in the pot. This is 10% of each player's stack, so
all clubs.
It's always worth fighting for.
5, Jack 7, and of course, just with the math, heads up. Once you gain chips, you were taking that many more chips away from your opponent and opening up that delta between. Reese out of position, but he's going to bet this all club flop.
5 million.
Dealer announces $5 million from Reese.
Doesn't look like Jay likes his hand very much, but he doesn't want to fold. He just hates folding right there.
Well, Reese had pocket queens and the queen of clubs.
That's a very good flop for his hand. He's not going anywhere.
So Ryan Reese now stacking chips, as once again this heads-up battle is a little closer. Almost identical stacks between these two. We're crowning a champion tonight. Back in Las Vegas for the finale of the World Series of Poker main event. 2 players left, Ryan Reese and Jay Farber. We gave somewhat of a title fight feel to the proceedings tonight, and in the early going, Antonio, they're just kind of trading punches, trying to feel each other out and figure out maybe what their opponent will fold.
Right, but I think that Reese has the upper hand so far. He started off with lower chips. He's caught up. He's also outplayed Jay Farber on a couple of hands, especially with the 4-bet Jack 3 offsuit. I like that a lot.
And you see both players over at their rails, and that's a factor that will come into play tonight. Norman, 15-minute delay, and they can get some extra info.
15 minutes later, they can find out what happened, what they folded to what the other guy had, and that, of course, informs them for what they're going to do going forward.
Technology today, as long as they're on an even playing field, that is just fine. Reese opens for a raise of $2.5 million, and you see the chip counts and how even they were.
Is there a 25,000 chip left on the table?
Still is.
Okay, so that one chip, that one little 25,000 chip, is the difference between Farber and Reese right now, with 190 million in play.
Raise. A raise from Farber.
He looks a little more confident on this one. I think he's probably got better than ace 8 this time.
6,200,000.
And by the way, he made it 6 million. And remember, yesterday when he had big hands, he put in bigger raises. So it's more likely that he has a better hand. Also, there's so much to pick up when you're right there. I mean, you can really feel someone's energy when you're right next to them.
And there's no place to hide heads up. I mean, you can't sit back and watch a hand go by. And that tends to push a human, as it were, nonetheless a player, into their old patterns. And a little easier maybe to get a read over a period of time as Reese makes this call. Almost 13 million in the middle, and we'll see a flop. Jack deuce 7, couple of spades. Under fatigue, under pressure, people do revert to their old habits, don't they, Antonio? And that's what you look for?
Yeah, of course.
Farber wasting no time reaching for those chips. The biggest denomination on the table, each of those reds worth $500,000. And then he puts the, as you like to say, the value-added tax on top, Norm.
Well, I get the funny feeling that he missed this flop. It's possible he had ace-queen or ace-king and doesn't love this flop. But
950,000.
Jay Farber's dad,
5,950,000.
You mentioned, as he mentioned in our pre-show, that's the first person he's going to run to should he win the bracelet tonight. Probably if he doesn't as well. Almost $6 million from Farber, and his dad will see him take it down. Farber with an ace.
But your radar is back on Farber. He did miss that flop.
He did miss that flop. Had Reese called the flop, I think he could have been taking it away on the turn.
Let's take a look at a day 7 hand that Jay Farber was involved in. He was all in with a draw, but was a statistical favorite to double up through Fabian Ortiz, thanks to what Jay knew were so many outs.
Come on.
He says all in for almost 3.7 million. Newhouse folds. Ortiz postures up and makes the call.
Come on. So many outs. So many outs. He has 9s.
But now just one card to come.
The river card. One time. There's the club for Jay Farber. Norman, Farber could have been gone right at that moment. We'd have an entirely different ball game here.
Indeed, and that was one of his few tough moments to have to endure during this main event. Every day of the main event, he increased his stack. At the end of every day, he had an above average stack, so it was pretty smooth sailing for Jay Farber for 7 days.
$2 million from each player here. They see a flop of Trey, 8, Jack, 2 hearts.
By the way, Ryan Reese on day 1 of this main event flopped quads twice. That recalls in 1998, Scotty Wynn flopped quads twice on day 2, and he went on to win the main event. Maybe a good omen for Ryan Reese.
Another heart on the turn. They both check the flop.
Bet. 2.5 million.
2.5 million from Reese. Now, when you're heads up out of position and you see something come on the board you can bluff at, is that a good thing?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, no one is going to make a hand all the time. And so what you steal is extra money that you earn. Let's say everybody made the same amount of money off the hands that they actually make. What puts aside someone that makes more money at poker is someone that's able to steal better than the other person. And so you have to do a lot of stealing in poker.
So sometimes being out of position, being the first to throw out the bet, can be an advantage under unique situations, maybe.
Sometimes, yes.
Okay. But you'd prefer certainly
but
to have
always
position.
want to be in position if you can be.
2.5 million from each after that turn card. 4 of clubs on the river, and Reese bets 4.5 million.
Right. It's very possible that Farber, you know, he checked the flop, and so that shows a little weakness there. He could have just had a heart in his hand, maybe a small pair.
And a straight for Reese with the 7-6.
You're kind of blocking there a little bit with your thumb.
And Reese takes down that pot and takes over the chip lead.
And by the way, he rivered a straight there. Had he missed, I think he was for sure firing one more bullet, and Farber would have let it go because the river card doesn't really make a difference for Farber's hand. And so whether or not Reese made the straight there on the river, he was winning that pot anyway.
All right, our count was off. Reese still close to the lead, but not. And this really neck and neck battle continues. Reese with the button, first to act pre-flop.
His main event game plan was pretty simple.
2.5 million.
For several days, he said just be patient and wait for great spots. He said he didn't bluff much, and that brought Ryan Reese down to day 7. And we still haven't seen him bluff a whole lot. He's played mostly ABC poker, but he seems to pick his spots really well.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like every time he 4-bets, his opponent is 3-betting very light. And I think he's very good at picking good situations to make moves.
There's that. That's the only 25,000 chip in play. Just the one you see.
Just
on
that
the
one.
screen.
See, that was a difference. I thought they only had one out there.
25K, 100, 250, and 500,000. There you see the small denomination green chips and the big, oversized, big denomination red chip. The two
Raised
in
to
between.
$2 million.
Farber with $2 million.
And so one of Farber's coaches definitely told them that every time you're on the button, you have to raise every single time. And I think that I'm not sure we've seen him miss a single one yet. That is actually correct strategy, but of course Reese is aware of this.
Reese calls for $1 million more. 9, 4, 5, 2 diamonds.
Check.
Cedes power to Farber, the pre-flop raiser, standard. And as you mentioned,
Bet.
a standard
2.7
continuation
million.
bet. And Ryan Reese releases. Straight draw for Farber, up and down. Reese also with Jack high there, and it'll be Farber stacking the chips.
Yeah, it seems like Reese doesn't really want to play a pot out of position when he misses the flop. I think he really wants to be in position. He wants to kind of control the pot a little bit more. He doesn't want to get carried away. He understands that Farber has come in not wanting to fold.
Do you see this as a purest form of Hold'em? Heads
Yes.
up?
Heads up for all of it.
So I guess I never will play the purest form of Hold'em.
I mean, I just love there's so much writing at stake, and you know, the legacy
Raised
of
to
each of these
2.5
guys for the
million.
rest of their life. They'll either be world champion or the guy that almost was world champion, and that's a big difference.
Financially as well tonight. Over $3.2 million difference between the first and second.
And speaking of financially, we talked about Ryan Reese's World Series circuit success. Just last year, he won $250,000 at a circuit event, and then after that, very bad bankroll management. He just started gambling in the pits. He had, on a 1-month period, he lost $50,000 playing roulette and blackjack, so he finally quit that stuff. See, I'm smarter, Lon. I've lost $50,000 in blackjack over like 25 years. So he had to get that out of his system, and he better keep that out of his system because he's very good at
Raised to
poker.
$2 million.
And it's not good to have leaks elsewhere, and so you got to plug those leaks and just stop playing.
Farber makes $2 million. And Reese reaching for more than 2 million chips.
In fact, when he had that bad skiing in the pits, he
Raised.
lost $30,000 in one night here in Las Vegas playing roulette. But I'm sure they
5
comped him a
million
buffet. That's still 30 grand one night.
And notice that Farber's raise is always double the big blind. It's 2 million, and Reese is bringing it in for 2.5 million. And you know, I think either way is completely fine. It's just personal preference. If you're in position, I like 2.5 because now when you get called, you build a bigger pot, and those are the kind of pots you want to play when you have position.
Do you think they're getting advice as well heading into this heads-up battle? Pay to see the flop, almost no matter what?
I mean, I think it's really situational. You can't just tell someone, hey, you know, see a flop. Right. So I think that certainly they've discussed the topic, but with certain hands.
Ace 8-4, Reese comes out firing.
So there's a lot of hands that Reese would 3-bet with, like King Jack or King Queen or even a small pair or something. And so if Farber calls on the flop here, Reese is really on the defense if he doesn't have at least an ace in his hand.
And that's a call. 5 million from each on the flop. Look at the size of the pot.
So now remember, Farber raised pre-flop and called a re-raise and is now called on an ace 8-4 flop. So I think it's unlikely that Farber is floating here, and by floating I mean just calling with nothing just to take it away on the turn. I think it's more likely he actually caught a little piece of that flop.
Reese checks the 7 of diamonds on the turn. Farber, when he looks at his chips, usually reaches for his chips. That's hefty. Approaching 10 million.
8,200,000.
I mean, even if Reese had a real hand, a big ace or something like that, I think that definitely he would check call the turn.
Farber putting Reese to the test. And the Crowd will tell you what's going on there.
Yeah, I think it's very likely that Reese actually has an ace in his hand.
And our first huge confrontation of the night with the pot swelling above 36 million.
As they started, as you see, their starting chip counts before the hand up top, pretty even. Another ace now on the river. And that sends a message to both, usually when you see a second ace on the board.
Yeah, also, if Reese has a hand like jacks or tens, it's now less likely that Farber actually has the ace.
That was a fun card to fall. And the crowd knew it. You see all the Reese beasts to be in the back on their feet.
And no more check calling from Ryan Reese.
Yeah, I think it's more likely he has ace queen or something like that. I think he never has a full house here. This is actually a really good spot for Farber to move in, because it's very clear that Reese does not have a full house. And if Farber ships it, even with a hand like ace-king, Reese almost can't call.
Farber does call ace-king for Reese, and it was two pair. They were counterfeited. One of them was by the aces, but fours and sevens for Farber after the turn.
Well, Jay Farber had Ryan Reese in a bad spot through the turn.
He certainly did, but the river card saved Ryan Reese. He now has the chip lead, 112 million to 78 million, as Ryan Reese beginning to take control of this championship table heads up.